temptation to sing Lagrange is suppressed. It's been stuck in my head for like the last 3 days. Walking around the house. I'm not going to give you a soundbite, so I'm not going to do it.
Welcome to GCP Life, episode number 25 for the 14th of October 2022. GCP Life is sponsored by Kasna. At Kasna, we make your Google Cloud solutions possible. And I'm your host, Stephen Bancroft. On today's show, what's going on at Google next? The 2022 Dora Report is out. We look at some new Google features. And what exactly is Devops? But before we get to any of that, I'd like to welcome the co-host of the show, Dave Wall. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing great, thanks, mate. Trying to fit some Google Cloud Next stuff into my schedule. It's just finding it be very difficult today.
Very difficult, and having a bunch of last-minute stuff come and land on our desk is...
Every time someone like links something like, "Oh, check out this cool announcement," like I need some time. I would love to. Give me a moment. That might be how I spend my evening.
Look, I was hoping we'd have a few things to talk about, but honestly, I don't at the moment. I just have not had time to look at anything. Hopefully next week we can really dig into it a bit more with a bit more time to
digest,
soak some of it up. Yeah, I might get to look at some of it this afternoon, but right now, there's a lot going on.
Hectic time.
Yeah. I think right now, just looking at the schedule there, they're replaying the opening keynote right now, so I might catch a bit of that when we finish the show here. Besides that, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Let's see. I mean, outside of work, I had to replace one of my wireless APs at home. I had one where that was actually kind of interesting. It's one of those like Unify APs, and they have two different ways of being PoE powered. They have like a conformant PoE spec, and then they have like a passive PoE. I think it's 24 or 48 volts. I can't remember what. They've got this different specification. And, so
is that when you've got the PoE injector, or are you taking it from a switch?
Yeah,
is that what they're for?
If you're using a switch, then you get the conformant spec one, and then that's fine. But if you're using the injector, it also supports the passive way of doing it. And I actually found that, one of my APs died. And when I was troubleshooting, I worked out that, for some weird reason, you can't run it on PoE, but you can run it on passive PoE. It's like, I don't know, might have a different chip or something going on inside it. But But anyway, so I replaced that. I managed to get my hands on one of the new, like brand new Unify 6 Enterprise APs, but the 6 gigahertz radio. So they have 3 radios. They have 2.4, 5, and 6. But 6 isn't ratified in Australia yet, and so I can't enable that radio. So it's there. My phone supports Wi-Fi 6E, but
right. So what'll happen? They'll bring out a firmware with that enabled when the time comes.
Yeah, once it gets ratified, then they should be able to switch that on. So I guess it's more future-proofing.
You might be able to. Look, there's probably going to be a beta firmware floating around, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I don't want to run afoul of the the Spectrum police.
Or void any sort of warranties you may have.
Actually, so back in the old IT horror stories thing, a company I worked for once, we had that happen because one of the telcos, like years before, had put like a repeater on site to... like if you're a very large customer, sometimes you get like a small repeater to help with like phone coverage within your building.
A little local base station thing.
We'd changed contracts and years had gone by, like 8 years had passed, and they had decommissioned, I think it was one of the old 3 gigahertz bands that they decommissioned. And then they completely forgot about the infrastructure sitting there. We weren't using it, but the box was still on. And then, one day we had someone turn up at the gate and said, "You're broadcasting in, licensed frequencies bands." We're like,
licensed space,
I think I know what you're on about. And I pulled the box out. I was like, it's got your company name on it. It's not ours. This is your equipment. You can have it back.
Yeah, that would have been when they reshuffled all the frequencies and the TV station bands and moved them all around, gave a whole bunch to the telcos as well.
Yeah.
Probably it's almost 10 years ago now, I think that happened. All right. I haven't, I've really done very little in terms of tech adventures in the last fortnight. Just busy with life.
Yeah.
other than teching stuff up.
Oh, I have been building. I was very excited about the Office Lego set. So
here we go.
so me and my wife are building that on the weekends, which is good. There's so many little Easter eggs and stuff in there, like so many things from the show. It's really clever.
So many funny things. Yeah. I've got some Star Wars sets to build there too. I've got to get to those.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get on with the news items. All right, the 2022 Dora Report is out, and I had to read through this. You brought this to my attention, Dave. What did you think?
Yeah, so I mean, this is great because every year they do this survey. It comes out. So I think they've got 5 or 6 years worth of data now, seeing how DevOps as a practice expanded through the industry, and they get sort of trends. But they've added in like new fields. Like this year, they're doing a lot with. Obviously security is such a hot button thing, especially the whole supply chain attacks and how we secure ourselves against that. So it was interesting to see a few things that went backwards, though. That was probably the biggest thing that stood out to me in the report, is that the percentage of companies who would consider themselves as elite or high performers in the DevOps space. So and this is rated against things like how frequently you can deploy to production and that sort of stuff, right? But like last year,
they actually removed the elite categorization.
Elite is gone, and they rolled it into high. But last year, 26% of responders were elite, and 40% were high. So that's 66% of Dora responders. This year, 11% are high and 69% are medium. So it's a big, big drop. And in fact, the low tier increased from 7% to 19%. So it was interesting in the...
Do they say in this summary here how many responders all up they got? Because that could be an artifact of more people jumping in.
Yes.
And then the resultant is regression to the mean, which is a statistical phenomenon, which means that everyone's going to be average. The more people you put in there, the more average you're going to get.
Yeah. I think it said in the report that they're still analysing like the kind of the whys behind it, why these things shifted. I mean, if I was just putting my finger in the air and be like, okay, why? One thing is that they said that there's a potential about just, remote working and like long time after, sort of COVID stuff, that it's put an impact on things. But I mean, to me, that doesn't ring true so much, because I feel that you've had to mature your practices so much to support remote work.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's just merely a matter of the fact that the Dora Report has sort of grown in popularity, so more companies are benchmarking themselves as a before they do anything sort of things, like a before and after. That's my kind of gut feel, but it remains to see when the full report comes out and a bit more analysis around it. But
yeah, and I think this is a point you made out to me earlier. It's like early on, 2018, I think this has started. It would have been all the propeller heads that were involved in this, right? And they would have been the ones that were interested in it. Therefore, you would imagine it would be people obtaining a high or elite score.
Yeah, that would be my that would be my expectation.
Yeah, and as we go on, there are more companies getting involved, and they aren't so adept at it. And you've got that regression to the mean phenomena, so you end up with a bigger group in the medium. Yeah,
definitely, right. You probably back in 2018, you got way more like born in the cloud natives, and they're going to be higher up on the, just by nature. You're going to have less baggage. You've got less legacy code bases that you're pulling around. Not none, but less. Whereas as it sort of spreads into wider enterprise and you start going further back into mainframe systems, that's probably going to drag your score down.
Yeah, it's going to drag your score down. I like this quote here. One thing we found surprising was that the biggest predictor of organizations' software security practice was cultural, not technical. High trust, low blame cultures focused on performance were significantly more likely to adopt emerging security practices than low trust, high blame cultures focused on power or rules.
And that really comes back to those generative cultures within companies, right? This is, we'll touch on this a little bit later on when we talk a bit more about the what is DevOps stuff, but it's a big one, right? The cultural shift is key.
Yeah. And one of the tables that I've got in this article, will be links in the show notes. The high performers, you would need on-demand multiple deploys per day. Lead time for changes between 1 day and 1 week. Time to restore less than 1 day. Change rate is 0 to 15%. Now, all of that to me, reading between the lines there, that to enable that to happen means that the management trusts their staff.
Mm-hmm.
Trust their staff to do the right thing, and the big teller there is the lead time. If a company starts having a lot of outages and they are running into a lot of problems, the knee-jerk reaction is, well, we'll add more lead time to it. It'll allow us to check more.
Or we're in a change freeze.
We're in a change freeze. We're not going to make any changes, which is the opposite of what you want, right?
So everything is just going to ossify just a little bit more.
Yep, and then you're going to move into this low category here, which is you make changes between once per month and once every 6 months.
Yeah, that's your big release.
You're going to have long lead times between 1 month and 6 months.
Yep, everyone, we have to work all weekend.
1 week to 1 month, and change failure rate 40 to 60%. Boy, I would not want to work for that company.
How is that like? So twice a year you do a release. And at least half of those times, it's failed and has to roll back. Like that's a terrible existence.
Take you up to a month to roll it back.
Yeah, no thanks.
No. So I would imagine that would be a low trust environment, right?
Yeah. DevOps is a shining light on the hill.
Yeah. Way to get away from that. So the link I'll give you in the show notes is a great summary of it. There is a link to the full report. Be some nice bedtime reading. And there's also another article that I'll link in there from a company by the name of Cybersecurity Dive. And they point out a few brief items. And they say organizations that use automated tools to develop and integrate applications on a consistent basis are more likely to have mature security practices. So they're coming from a security angle. Security was a big part of this Dora report. The combined practice of CI and CD is a leading indicator of an organization's adoption of advanced practices. Okay, we know that. Nearly 2/3 of respondents said CI/CD was very or completely established in their organisation. So it's quite high when you think about it. By extension, the majority of respondents reported guidance in the supply chain levels for software architect frameworks and the National Institute of Standards and Technology Secure Software Development Framework are established within their organisation. So, they're saying that 2/3 have got that as well. So nice.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the thing is, once you've got that in place, right? Once you're doing CI/CD, then you can start adding additional steps into your pipelines, right? Like it's not that hard to. Once you've got the bones, to go, okay, let's add a step in here for. We're gonna. we put SonarQube in there to do some scanning, or we're going to do some container vulnerability analysis. Like you can add all those things really easily, and it just lifts your security posture up so much.
Yeah, because I've seen it before, right? Like long time before CI/CD came along, it's like, right, we're going to have this process now. We're going to do We're going to do checking of, all of these bits of code before they go. We're going to do some sort of check. We're going to do some sort of scan or some sort of patch before every change goes out. No. Like, it might last for a couple of weeks and it just gets forgotten about and everyone goes back to what they were doing before.
Yeah, it's like, I don't have time. We've got a crisis. I'll just push this one little one into prod.
Just push this one thing.
It'll be fine.
Someone says, can we just not do that now? This is an emergency. Yeah.
It's like, you'll need your director to sign off on it. That's okay. He's signed off. Okay, all right, off we go.
Yeah. And it gets signed off on, it gets bypassed. So what was the point of the whole thing in the first place? But you're right. If you've got CI/CD and once you put it in code in CI/CD, it's there for perpetuity.
Another thing that you can do once you've got your CI/CD pipeline in place is that you can change where you want to deploy your code to, and maybe you want to deploy that to Cloud Run. Of course, having your Cloud Run instance start up could be a little bit slow. It
would be a little bit slow unless you use faster cold starts with Startup Boost.
That was a good segue.
We are the segue kings.
that was version 0.8 of our segue. We'll be working on that.
Google Cloud has announced new startup CPU boost improves cold startups in Cloud Run Cloud Functions. This is cool. And I've actually got a use case for this.
Yes, you do.
That is more or less in place right now. I had the devil's own treat during the fortnight because you may have noticed we've moved the GCP Life website onto the new Kasna website, and unfortunately, the way the website's designed now was not compatible with the podcast plugin that I was using. So I went ahead and I developed some code that runs in a Cloud Function that just does our RSS feed for us for the show. And if you're listening to this, then you would have picked this show up from that function, all running in Google Cloud, of course. Now, the thing that I noticed is if you run it, just continually run it, it responds back with the RSS feed in about sort of 1.5 seconds. And the reason it takes that long is because it's got to pull some metadata from the bucket and sort of build things dynamically. And that's fine. Spotify, iTunes, and Google all seem to be happy with that. But if it's been stopped for a while and you go to hit it and run it again, it can take 8 or 9 seconds to respond. And that's because it's a cold startup. And that's what this new feature prevents.
Indeed, yeah. And like previously, you could speed things up a little bit by, going to a larger size. You can throw some more resources at it, but then you're paying for it on every invocation and for the whole time.
That's right. Yep. A cold start is a latency encounter at the processing of a request that is due to the startup of a new container instance to serve the request, so that initial startup. If you enable this cold startup feature, some workloads, the startup time can be cut in half. So you can get up to 50% faster for Spring Pet Clinic sample app that Google has provided. And in this article, they give some examples here.
Yeah, I think they go like Node.js on average, like a 30% faster startup time.
Yeah. These two Spring examples were like around 50% and Java Cloud Functions 23%. So it's still in beta. You just enable it with a gcloud beta command and you'll get the option to enable a checkbox to turn on Startup CPU Boost. And that's it. You're done.
Yeah, a bit of extra resources at the beginning and then off it goes.
Yeah, what would it be doing under the hood?
Oh, I think it's just dynamically giving you more CPU, right?
Oh, that's what it's doing at the start. Right, okay. Yeah. Gives you more cores at the start, and then once it's up and running, it winds it back down.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it gives you more shares of a CPU when it's coming up. Whatever it does, it's great.
It works. Fantastic. Yeah, I haven't turned it on just yet for my cloud function, but I might give it a go. Yeah. It turns out it's not really necessary because between Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Spotify, they're constantly polling it anyway. So it's alive all the time. So it's not really necessary in my case.
Right.
All right, cool. Let's move on to the next item. We have connecting workload VMs to Dell PowerScale.
Yeah, so this was one that popped up, and obviously we do a fair bit of VMware engine stuff, and I've been following the storage side of that for a while. And it has been for a while that you've been able to use NetApp Cloud Volumes, and you can attach that ONTAP based storage, still hosted in GCP, but you could connect that over to your VMs in GCVE. Now they are supporting Dell PowerScale as a storage service for it, which is great.
Why would you use one or the other, NetApp or Dell PowerStore?
Yeah, so between using, I suppose it might depend on what sort of services you are most comfortable with. Like if you're coming from a traditional on-prem side of things, so both have significant penetration in the on-prem market. The PowerScale one seems to tout some pretty high performance numbers. So what am I seeing here? So yeah, scale out capacity up to 50 pebibytes in a single namespace.
I'm not the biggest fan of these terms.
Pebibytes?
Pebibytes in a single namespace, yeah.
And scale out performance up to 97 megabytes per second per tibibyte. Tibibyte. Which is great, right? And hands off the complete lifecycle management of the environment to Dell, right? Which is it's the same as like NetApp's doing. You're getting sort of their appliances, their storage. You're not having to manage it anymore.
Yeah, that really does seem like the use case for this, doesn't it? High performance.
Really is, yeah.
They're saying for AI and ML workloads, this is the way to go.
Yeah, and it's it's predominantly presenting a file share protocol, so it's either NFS or SMB, right? So I don't see like any iSCSI here for block storage. You're still coming out as a filer, but anything gives you more options to expand storage in. Well, okay, I say GCVE, but you can use this with Compute Engine or anything else as well. So like that,
anything that just mount to NFS or Samba.
Yeah, correct. So that's still a good use case in general, especially if you're moving into GCVE as a kind of first migration before you move your data out somewhere else. Like you can put it onto PowerScale or ONTAP, and then you can mount that storage to Compute Engine or wherever else you're going to need it.
Just flicking through the documentation here, it's got some documentation on the PowerScale administration web UI. So yeah, again, if you're familiar with PowerScale, you want the same experience than when you move to cloud, this is the way to go.
You can have it.
You can have it, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? All these vendors scrambling to sort of find relevance in a cloud-enabled world.
For sure.
Because if likes of NetApp, VMware, and Dell didn't do this, and your hyperscalers were just using all their custom ASIC and custom built systems, well, those vendors would just ultimately end up pushed out of it, right?
Yeah, it's 100% the case, right? You've got to adapt. And I think for a lot of these vendors, these traditional enterprise vendors, then it's given them a way forward, right? Especially, I got plenty of enterprise businesses that are going to be doing their cloud migrations. It's like, well, we can give your team of storage engineers supporting your global infrastructure that know how to manage Dell.
Yeah, right. They're the guys that know how to do it, right? Yeah.
And we can give them storage that they know how to interact with and how to treat without having to completely replace them with cloud engineers, or at least it gives them something that they can start working on this while they learn to become cloud engineers. So another tool in the toolbox.
Exactly. Speaking of tools in the toolbox, I really like this next item, introducing Workforce Identity Federation to easily manage workforce access to Google Cloud. Now, I played around with GCDS, Google Cloud Directory Sync, And the idea of that was to take, say, your Active Directory, synchronize it, and then make it available to IAM so that you could authenticate to IAM using your identity from your AD or your LDAP service, right?
But you had to maintain that synchronization. You had to keep that copy.
You had to maintain that synchronization, and security people didn't like it because it was synchronizing data outside of their environment. This new tool, Workforce Identity Federation, gets rid of all that, right? Rather than syncing, it federates. And it's all done with a token. So you log into your identity provider, a token is generated, and that is passed on to Workforce Identity, which returns a Google token, and then that token from Google permits you to connect to the Google project or via the IAM. And no need to manage a separate GCDS instance. If you go looking in the Terraform module registry, you'll find a module that I created that tried to spin it up, and it was so ugly. You had to. It was an X desktop thing, and you had to go in and configure it in this Java GUI thing.
Oh no.
No, it wasn't nice at all. This does away with all that and just federates your external identity directory with IAM. Now you can use it with other directories as well. They mention Okta, and a few other. They specifically mention Okta in the video that is on the site. But without mentioning Active Directory, this is clearly what this is aimed at.
Here we go. Yep. You can use Workforce Identity Federation with any IDP that supports OpenID Connect or SAML2, such as Azure Active Directory, Active Directory Federation Services, Okta, and others.
Yep. There you go. Yep. Yeah, SAML2. Yep. Yeah.
No, that's excellent.
So this will be the way forward, indeed. About time they had this. Yeah, so that is Workforce Identity Federation. Link in the show notes. Now, this next one is something you brought to me, Dave, and I don't even pretend to understand this. Introducing Ambient Mesh. What is this all about?
Okay, all right. So this one came to my awareness because I was listening to the very excellent Kubernetes podcast from Google. And they had on these two developers who are part of the Istio project. So Istio is service mesh provider on Kubernetes, or one of. Right? And the interesting thing about the way, for the listeners, or whether or not they're interested in Kubernetes or service meshes at all, but the way Istio works inside of your Kubernetes environment is it creates these sidecar proxies, or sidecar containers, right? So you'll have a pod that's like the smallest unit of what you can sort of deal with in Kubernetes. It might be your Nginx pod or whatever Nginx container running inside a pod, but you can have a sidecar container inside, right? So you can say like, right, Nginx, you send your traffic out of localhost, sidecar proxies there, and it handles all that, does all that traffic for you. The downside of this, of having to manage all these sidecars, is that it's a little bit invasive, right? So it's helpful for some applications that don't support MTLS for encrypted traffic. You can put these sidecars in place and you sort of gain that functionality. But it's a little invasive because you have to modify the Kubernetes pod spec and redirect traffic within the pod. The downside really is that installing or upgrading the sidecars requires restarting the application pod. So depending on how your application is, if you've got a stateful workload, you might actually have a little bit of impact there. Another big one that they're trying to solve is underutilization of resources. So because the sidecar proxy is dedicated to the associated workload, the CPU and memory resources that it needs have to be provisioned for the worst case usage, and that can lead to large reservations that lead to underutilization. So this is one of the things that they're trying to solve, right? They're also, if you have a non-compliant HTTP stack, right, things just can't, maybe won't behave properly. So at a high level, here comes Istio Ambient Mesh. So instead of having sidecars and managing sidecars, Ambient Mesh deploys a waypoint proxy into the namespace. All right, so this is very new. It's experimental right now, and to me, this harkens back to like the days of our on-prem infrastructure with all that traffic has to go through a firewall. And this is kind of that, right? It's just we're putting in your namespace a waypoint proxy, and all the traffic in and out of that namespace will go through that. And then there's encrypted traffic using Z tunnels that goes between the pods themselves and sources and destinations. So this is new. It'd be worth playing around with. I don't know if you're able to enable this on GKE yet. And it remains to be seen if this is going to be a full replacement for the sidecar pattern, which has served well for a number of years. This might just be like an alternative way of doing it, depending on what your particular use case is, whether you want to have a distributed mesh or not. But it's a big change, and it's pretty funky. In fact, actually, the two developers who were working on it sort of come from a network virtualization space. I think they actually did a fair bit with VMware before coming over to the Kubernetes project.
Right, I'm reading here, the Z-tunnel performs no layer 7 processing on workload traffic, making it significantly leaner than sidecars. Okay, so it's almost like you've got a little VPN between them all, and you've just got this little encrypted tunnel where they just pass packets backwards and forwards. Is that sort of the...
Yeah, I think so, without having to do all the termination stuff.
Yeah. Performs no level 7, because if you've got a proxy, of course, you've got to terminate it, then set up another session. You've got to connect and then do another session. So you get rid of all that and just allow it to go through these Z tunnels.
Yeah. So I said early days. Be very keen to see how this evolves as a pattern going forward.
It will be, yeah. Okay, link in the show notes for that one. Let's move on. And Dave, we've got a list. Dave. A list.
I hate a list. We should never have lists on the show.
Should never have
Half the show is gone. No more lists.
We all know that Google deprecated IoT Core recently. We mentioned it on the show. There's a company called a website called IoT for All, and they specialize in IoT. And they've created this article here where we have a list of 5 things, and they're saying 5 reasons why Google Cloud is still the best cloud for IoT, even without IoT Core. That's interesting. They go on to say Google Cloud is adopting an open, partner-led strategy to IoT that mirrors their approach to many of their other cloud services. So moving away from proprietary things like IoT Core. In fact, at Leverage, we still believe that Google Cloud is the best cloud for IoT applications, and here are 5 reasons why. Now, I'm not going to read all the points on all 5 reasons, but we'll just go through them quickly. Unrivaled security. Well, that goes without saying, especially with things like the Mandiant acquisition recently, and Google amping up their security posture across all their products. I think it's a hands down, there's no argument there, right? Mm-hmm. Leading AI and ML products, right? So I guess if you're using IoT, AI and ML is going to be a big part of it, right? You're going to want to do something with all the data you can collect it, and
Google's the place to do it.
I don't think there's Google's place to do that. I don't think there's any argument there either, right? Next one I found interesting, lowest costs.
Okay, so this is talking more about their own particular, from the company who wrote this article, right? Their own stack, I think.
Well, the leverage IoT stack is sophisticated, yeah, but they do go on to say, since the operating cost of IoT solutions is often the biggest inhibitor to scale, keeping infrastructure costs low unlocks many cases that might have not been too expensive to automate.
Oh, gotcha, right. I think what in the article they're sort of talking about the fact that their stack has been deployed in a lot of places, and so they've got real world usage data, and they reckon that Google's the
that's
cheapest
right.
platform?
I think they're specifically referring to the fact that when you do scale it on Google, the costs are it's the best outcome.
Right.
We know from direct experience that no cloud is more reliable and less expensive to operate at scale than Google Cloud.
Probably consuming a whole bunch of spot VMs in there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's absolutely spot VMs, right? So they're saying it's just the cheapest at scale. Data resiliency. So here they're talking about the global fiber backbone, the 9/11 resiliency that you get on Google Cloud buckets. Oh, sorry, the 11 nines resiliency. 11 nines.
I don't know if I want
like something off Star Trek.
Resiliency.
Yeah. The 11 nines of resiliency that you get on Google Cloud storage buckets. And of course the global reach that, the premium network has. And the location services, right? Really important for IoT. We've got millions of little IoT boxes everywhere. You're going to need to know where they are. You've got Google Maps and Google Earth for indoor and outdoor visualization of the data.
And I think that's kind of like the big player in Google space, right? Is there's just so many complementary services, so that you could kind of replace this. You could replace this article, instead of it being like, oh, it's the best place for your IoT stuff. You could be for any number of things. And just the fact that you can consume so many other leading services, like the AI/ML stuff, like any use case, you'll be able to find something in there. And having your environment co-located, and all that data accessible rapidly, BigQuery plugged into everything. It's just such a competitive ecosystem.
And that's it. It's about the ecosystem, right? It's that Gestalt entity where everything combined just makes the sum of it worth more than the individual components. Yeah. All right, cool. That's our list for the episode. Last week we introduced a new item called What Is It? I did my breakdown on what an OKR is, and I went away and I used some of that information. I redeveloped some of the OKRs for one of our internal teams.
I have to say they looked really good too.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's just I had to simplify that, right? And having it clear in my mind really helped simplifying that. And I think it's going to help us really kick some of them. I mean, you saw how many things are in that Trello board now, right? It's really gone up, so we can really track some of those things now, which is really good.
Seeing cards move through from left to right, it's great.
Yeah. But this week, Dave, you're going to give us a breakdown on what is Devops.
Yeah, and I didn't want to turn this into like a lecture, right? Because it's huge, right? Like Devops is it's a big thing, right? But what is it? Is it okay? I use Python to manage my infrastructure. Is that it? No. Probably not it. Is it? It's Kubernetes. Must be Kubernetes. Kubernetes stuff. It's definitely DevOps. No, it's not Kubernetes. It must be automation. But, well, as Christopher Little,
that's part of it.
Yeah, it's part of it. But as Christopher Little, research director at Gartner, puts it, or he put it quite a few years back, but DevOps isn't about automation, just as astronomy isn't about telescopes. Right, so one is very helpful with the other, but it's not the reason. So, like, what is it then, right? Like, so Atlassian has it defined quite nicely on their side as a set of practices, tools, and a cultural philosophy that automate and integrate the processes between software development and IT team. And for me, it's that last one, right? It's that cultural philosophy is like the biggest part of DevOps that really speaks to me, right? It speaks to a world where developers can fulfill their goal of rapidly delivering the features and changes that the business requires and delivering value that way without crashing against the operations department's desire of having stable platforms and not getting paged at 3 a.m. on a Sunday with a P1 incident, right? And those two are usually in competition, right? They're in two different silos and they've got very different performance goals, right? But an infrastructure team,
developers are focusing on new features.
They just want they've got to deliver those new features.
They don't want new features. They want stability, right?
The operations team doesn't want to have that code deployed. They don't, if you change it, you'll break it. And that's true. But we also, if we don't change, we ossify and we get, we become fragile. So an infrastructure team that embraces DevOps can work towards eliminating toil, removing the day-to-day grunt work that slowly grinds us all down, and frees you up to be able to improve the service and yourself. So this is only a short,
which makes you more engaged, right?
100%, right? You can do more interesting work, right? This isn't about we're going to do DevOps because we can now we can get rid of a couple of people. Right? If we automate, we've got a team of 10 guys, what about if we automate some things, we could probably get rid of 3 people. But that's not the case, right? It's just about shifting you from being a cost center to being, a key part of the value delivery for the company, right? So, you can spend all day increasing the hard drive space of a CentOS VM that ran out and caused you can do that if you want to, or you can go on the DevOps journey, and you'll buy a lot of time back in your day. You get rid of that grunt work. Right? That's you'll find new and interesting challenges, and you'll be better for it, right? So this is only a short segment, right? We don't have a 3-hour lecture to go into, so I'm not going to deep dive into what are the 3 ways of DevOps. Right? You can read up on that yourself. Yeah. But at a high level, it is about breaking down the silos between development and operations. It helps improve the rate of change while significantly improving reliability, right? You're having your cake and you're eating it. You're moving from a world where software releases are big, scary, rare occurrences, right? Those low performers in the Dora report that we spoke about earlier, to one where small deployments to production can happen many times a day without an operations person ever needing to log into a server, right? It just happen around you. I don't know what the term for it is. It's the cycle of pain and suffering, the deployment cycle of pain and suffering, every step that's required to get this application to production
is painful. Yeah, where it should just become a regular occurrence. It should just be mundane, really.
100%.
It should just be day to day. Yeah,
yeah. And then, when you get to that space, then you're not having to do your changes on a Saturday night. It's no, you can probably do it 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. It's fine.
Yep. Push out this small change. Oops, it hasn't worked. Click a button. It's back.
Yeah. We've done a blue-green deployment. That's fine. Cut the other way.
Yep.
There's so many cool and interesting things that you'll be able to do when you go down on this journey, right? So, a DevOps team is multidisciplinary, right? So it's not, you don't just take your IT organization and say, oh, cool, this team of guys who manage the on-prem infrastructure, they're now a DevOps team, because we changed their titles in the HR system, right? And we've all known plenty of organizations that have done that. Oh, you've all got new titles. You're now DevOps engineers. Congratulations. I was I think I was a Windows administrator for 30 years. It's oh no, you're a DevOps engineer now. Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay. Terraform.
I don't know what that is.
CICD.
So yeah, that team will be made up of people from varied backgrounds. Generally, they'll be able to take accountability for like the whole life cycle of a product. So from writing the code, seeing it deployed to prod, ensuring it's monitored, responding to incidents. It's like that build it, run it mindset. And by pulling the team together, by pulling both your dev and ops side together, it aligns their incentives, right? So they've got the incentive to deliver code, quality code, quickly, but the people cutting that code are the same people getting the calls if it falls over. So they definitely they'll feel the pain if they're they're not putting their right unit tests in place. They're if you're taking shortcuts there, you're hurting your own team. So the feedback loop is really important in there. And like on the infrastructure side, right? You're in that team. You've got incentives to be able to like deliver the infrastructure pieces. Like you might be working on a card to build out a new container spec or something, right? So you want to deliver that as quickly as possible because you don't become a blocker for your own team, right? The people who are in your stand-up. And like it also helps that like many of the best tools and systems that like help you manage your platforms as an infrastructure guy, like they really shine when you start to use them the way a developer would, right? So working alongside developers, you get to learn a whole bunch of stuff, right? So your operations people get to learn how to use like Git and any kind of like source control and even just practices like extreme programming or pair programming, like working alongside someone. Like these are all really good practices, and they're fun for an infrastructure person to get on that journey with, right? And I think from the developer side, you get a bit more of that empathy with the people who actually have to run the platform after you've deployed.
Yeah, or the hey, hang on a minute, that's not going to work when you put it into a real network.
Yes,
that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's definitely like they're complementary skills, right? So you can have. I like to think of it a bit of a spectrum thing, right? So you'll have a DevOps team, and you'll have some people who are like big D DevOps, and some people are big O DevOps. Like you're all in the same team. You've got like biases one way or the other, but you're working together. So if you are an infrastructure person, you've started to get comfortable with like VS Code, and you've learned how to use GitHub, and that's really helpful when you want to start doing infrastructure as code, right? Like Terraform works way better if it's in source control.
You just described my entire career in one sentence, Dave.
Yeah, it's baby steps, right? You learn a little piece, and then it all goes together, right? And it's the same for me, Becky.
Yeah.
And like, don't get me wrong, that can be hard. Like if you've been a traditional ops person, you've never, besides maybe like a PowerShell script or something, you haven't done any coding. Like it can be a bit to sort of go on that journey. But
yeah, if you're like a ClickOpsy kind of ops person, I was a Unix guy, so scripting and bashing was very familiar to me. But it's a bit different, yeah. But absolutely, if you're just a ClickOpsy type, it could be very intimidating. I can imagine
for sure. Sidetracked a little bit there, but we've seen it with like previous projects, right, where we've shown teams that had like a ClickOps kind of Windows or VMware admin person who used to just click their way around, and you say like, hey, check out how we can manage all of these things with Terraform. Oh, you want to deploy like 50 things? No worries. It's like I'll change a couple of lines here, and we go Terraform apply. Done.
Yep.
Oh, we didn't name them correctly. Oh, give me a sec. Search and replace. Apply. Done.
Applying it. Yep.
Like, oh, geez. Like, how much time do you get back in your day?
Yeah. Or that NSXT thing we did. Oh, we put 16 networks onto the wrong router, changed the router, boom, flipped them all over, and no one noticed.
Yeah. Impactless, right? So
impactless. Yeah.
It's definitely once you're doing IAC, infrastructure as code, and you're in the cloud, like you consuming, you're not just say spinning up a VM on VMware, like, okay, I want any kind of service that I want to be able to consume in my my cloud provider or multiple cloud providers, then you're off to the races then, right?
So where does that leave SRE?
Right. So is SRE in like competition with DevOps? No. Like it's I think we'll have to actually do like an what is SRE segment, because it is a question that comes up like in a future episode of the show. But at a high level, like SRE is just a practical way, it's the Google way, of implementing the DevOps philosophy. All right, so they term it as in the programming kind of joke, right, of class SRE implements interface DevOps. So DevOps kind of sets the scene. SRE is how you can actually implement. It's not the only way to do it, but it's a pretty good basis, right?
So if I want to find out a bit more, where do I go?
Right.
What do I do?
So depending on how much of how far you want to go on the rabbit hole, right? If you kind of want to start at the beginning, you could read The Goal or listen to the audiobook of The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt. So that book's like a fictional setting in a manufacturing plant in the 80s. This is like an old book, but it was all about like the Toyota production system, and it's sort of he's kind of like the guy who brought like lean manufacturing and those concepts to like US automotive, and really like pretty much all manufacturing is based off lean nowadays. The people in the story, like even if you don't come from a manufacturing background, you can kind of get what's going on. So talking about the constraints, moving things through the factory. And it's the inspiration for the next book, which is The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim, Kevin Bear, and George Spafford. So if you're still in traditional IT, this book will change your life, right? It's another fictional setting, but this time it's in the IT department of a manufacturing company. A bit of a trigger warning for like long-suffering IT folk, right? There are incidents and like terse meetings and things that happen in this book that like you will have been in that meeting. Like I was like, listening to it, I'm like, I have been in this call. I know all these people, so I can see myself in that person. I can also see myself in the villain a few times, right? It speaks to that, right? And it really it takes the protagonist on a journey through the three ways of DevOps, right? To a better way, how to improve your organization and yourself. And the companion book to that is the DevOps Handbook. Right. It came out, I think, slightly afterwards, but it's by the same people. And it has real world case studies and examples of how organizations can implement the three ways. Goes a bit of the history there and like the real background of it. And then if you're looking for like SRE stuff, you've got the Google SRE book as well. That's available online for free at sre.google. And they term it in there that SRE is what happens when developers have to design and operate an engineering function. And that's all well worth doing. There's also some pretty great courses as well. If you're looking for certs, like the GCP DevOps one is nice. It's heavily SRE focused.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, I've read those SRE books there at the end. I recommend them.
Yeah, it really is, especially because like it's practical and you can sort of see how they built out their infrastructure at Google. It's really clever.
That's right. You get a little peek behind the curtain, don't you, with those?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. You know, how they built out the data centers and everything. Oh yeah. The whole different scale.
All right, Dave. Well, thanks for that. It was a good breakdown of what DevOps is. I will link. I'll see how I go. I can link those books in the show notes. I guess they're on Amazon. I'll link them there and find them and link them in Amazon.
Yeah, I think actually all three of those before the SRE book I listened to on Audible the first time around. I had
on Audible, were they?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Right, well, I think that brings us to the end of the show for this week. Next week, we want to do a 1-year anniversary special.
Yay!
So make sure you stay tuned for that. We're going to get the band back together, and I'll keep it close to my chest what's going to happen. But it's one not to miss, and it should be fun. But right now I have to make an apology. If you are subscribed on Google Podcasts, you may find that you have to resubscribe again. I had a problem, as I mentioned earlier, there was a problem with the feed and had to reset that. But no, it shouldn't be a drama if you're on Spotify or iTunes, and you can listen directly off the website as well. Of course, go to iTunes, write this show a review. You can find us, you can email us, gcplife@casna.com.au. We've got the Twitter there, gcplife. I usually cross-post these when the show comes out on LinkedIn, so you'll find it there. The website's all nice and new and shiny, and you'll see some nice photos of myself and Dave right up there.
Handsome selves.
Handsome selves, that's right. And of course, today's sponsor was Casna. At Casna, we make your Google Cloud solution possible. I think that's about it for me, Dave. You got anything else to add?
No, I think I've probably bored everyone to death with my Devops stuff, so...
Oh, no, that was great. It's all in the edit, mate. It's all in the edit.
It out. Yeah, very nice. Just going to drop that whole segment.
We'll catch you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Catch you later. Bye.
Never know where we're at.
Who are you? Bonky, right?
Bonky. Yeah, that's right.